The line of wagons rattled down the dusty lane toward the gates of twilight trails, lanterns jittering at the corners of the hay-baled flatbeds. Cass Knox stood beside the entrance arch, straw in her hair and dirt under her nails, watching families and college kids and giddy teenagers hop aboard. She had delivered 3 truckloads of her prize pumpkins only an hour earlier, and she could still smell their sweet, earthy ripeness clinging to her flannel sleeves. "Full house tonight," said Wyatt Pruitt, the owner of Twilight Trails, as he strode up with his ever-present clipboard. "How are the Charlevilles holding up?" "They grew thick walls this year," Cass answered. "Good for carving, bad for smashing." Wyatt grinned. "Perfect. Last thing I need is a wagon full of pulp in front of customers. You staying to watch?" "Could use a beer and my couch," she said, stretching her back. "But I want to see Marcus do the Headless Horseman run. He's been practicing that dismount for a month." "Then ride along," Wyatt told her, slapping the wooden rail. "Wagon 3 leaves in 5. Cass climbed on, nestling herself between 2 bales, while the late October sun bled crimson along the horizon. The driver barked the scripted warning, "Keep all arms and legs aboard. Spectres around here don't settle for just one limb," and the tractor tugged the wagon into the corn. Rows parted like closing curtains, the stalks high enough to blot out the dying sun, leaving only lantern light and the occasional strobe from hidden trail props. Cass had supplied pumpkins to Twilight Trails since the attraction opened 3 years ago. Every October, the fields around her family farm glowed with orange moons, and every October, those moons found new life as jack-o'-lanterns, maze markers, or smashed pulp behind jump-scare curtains. She enjoyed it, watching her produce become part of other people's autumn memories. But she'd never felt like one of the show folk, the costumed performers who whispered call and response lines through earpieces and timed their scares to the beat of pre-recorded thunder. Marcus Weaver was different. He'd grown up in the neighboring county, riding horses before he could walk, and he handled the chestnut gelding Wyatt rented each year with an almost psychic confidence. Cass had lent Marcus her grandfather's old cavalry sabre, a dulled antique, so the character of the Headless Horseman could brandish something more authentic than plastic. She looked forward to seeing the finale each night, if only to cheer for the friend who turned an empty Downy bottle into the gallop of doom with nothing more than hoofbeats and scarlet stage lights. That evening, the horseman's set lay at the far curve of the trail, a crescent clearing where the corn was cut low and a centuries-old oak rose like a black pillar against the sky. As the wagon approached, Cass noticed the usual fog machines pumping. Pale mist hugged the ground in threads. The driver slowed. Somewhere beyond the oak, a horse snorted. Parents hushed their children in anticipation. A sulphur-yellow spotlight snapped on, illuminating the horseman's path. But instead of bounding out of the fog atop the gelding, the animal ambled forward riderless, reins dragging. The crowd chuckled, assuming a prank, until the horse stopped beside the wagon. Its flanks trembled, a wet, metallic scent drifted across the hay. The driver called a halt and dismounted to grab the reins. Cass swung one boot over the rail and jumped down, curiosity prickling. She reached the horse, patted its neck, and felt the trembling muscle. When she ran her fingers lower, they came away slick and warm. Blood. A scream split the night. An older woman standing near the oak clapped her hands over her mouth. "There! Oh, dear God! There!" Lanterns swung. The driver shone his flashlight. Cass followed the beam. Marcus lay on his back at the edge of the clearing, his torso clad in the horseman's black coat, his legs still in leather riding boots. The stump of his neck ended where his jaw should have begun. His head was gone. No prop, no false stump. Gone. Cass staggered, bile rising. Someone wailed on the wagon. Children began crying. The tractor driver radioed frantic code words Cass didn't recognize. She tasted iron in her throat and realized she'd bitten her own tongue. Then her mind snapped from shock to instinct. She knelt beside Marcus's body, searching for any sign of life even as she knew there could be none. Blood had pooled around him, soaking into the frosted ground. More disturbing was the absence of spatter. The cut, no, more of a tear, looked ragged, the edges uneven as if the flesh had been twisted away rather than sliced. The pumpkin farmer in her, accustomed to identifying rot, breakage, rabbit gnaw, catalogued every unnatural detail. The smear of red along the saddle, the hoofprints circling back toward the oak, the drag marks in the dirt leading nowhere. And deeper, colder than all of it, the knowledge that a man she'd shared coffee with an hour before now lay genuinely headless in a spot meant for cheap thrills. Sirens converged within minutes. Sheriff Billy Hunt secured the area, dispatching deputies to escort shaken guests back to the entry gate. Wyatt stood white-faced near the oak, answering questions with rote obedience. Cass found herself wrapped in a blanket, though she couldn't recall who gave it to her. "Miss Knox?" Sheriff Hunt approached, hat brim shading her stern eyes from the cruiser lights. "You discovered the body?" "Not first." Cass's voice sounded far off. "The horse came out alone. I followed." "Did you touch anything?" "Only the horse." She showed the drying blood on her hands. "Marcus, he—" Sheriff Hunt nodded. "Paramedics will take statements soon. For now, stay close, please." Cass's farm bordered twilight trails on two sides, her pumpkin rows stretching like rust-colored waves beyond the corn. She looked toward them now, thinking of the irrigation ditch that marked the boundary, of the old scarecrow everyone called Pappy Stuffing, back when Cass's grandfather tended the fields. Moonlight glazed the ridges of soil, turning each pumpkin into a low, watchful eye. She shivered. The blanket offered no warmth. When the paramedics finished, Sheriff Hunt returned. "I hate to ask, but you know the land better than anyone. Could anything out there, a harvester blade maybe, cause what we saw?" "Not like that." Cass forced herself to picture the messy stump again. Blade cuts clean. This looked twisted off. Animal? Maybe a bear grabs a head, but a bear leaves claw marks. She searched the sheriff's face for logic and found none. Whatever did that was strong enough to jerk 20 pounds of flesh and bone in one go, and precise enough to do it mid-ride. Hunt exhaled. "We'll canvass at first light. Until then, security's posted, trails closed." Wyatt Pruitt wandered over, eyes glazed. "Cass," he croaked. "I didn't. This isn't—" She touched his arm. "I know." "Marcus loved that part," Wyatt whispered. "Said it felt like bringing the legend home." "Sleepy Hollow in our own backyard," he joked. Cass remembered the joke, and remembered too the conversation that had followed over thermoses of cider last week. Marcus had told them a story he'd unearthed, an old local tale older than Washington Irving's famous yarn. A revolutionary courier beheaded by loyalist raiders somewhere near these same fields, body buried without honors, head never found. Marcus claimed he'd tracked the gravesite using faded parish maps and a dowsing rod his grandmother swore by. "Gonna ride right over his bones," he'd said, laughing. "Maybe he'll show up for the encore." Cass had rolled her eyes at the time. Now she felt that laugh echo beneath her ribs like a wrong-way heartbeat. That night she didn't drive home. Instead, She walked the tractor path past the last of Twilight Trail's prop sheds and crossed the shallow ditch into her pumpkin fields. Mist pooled between the rows. The sky above was star-crazed, the Milky Way a torn veil. She told herself she was checking irrigation lines, but the flashlight beam kept drifting, searching for what? A disembodied head? A restless spirit? She wasn't sure. Halfway across the eastern plot, her boot struck something hard. She crouched, pushed aside vines, and saw a pumpkin split wide as a grin. Seeds glistened like pearls in the beam. Wedges of rind had been gouged, not gnawed. The pulp trailed in a wet line through the soil. She followed. More pumpkins lay savaged, their stems broken. The path curved toward the woodland fringe, where maples shook skeletal fingers in the breeze. Cass's pulse hammered. She smelled that metallic tang again. "Marcus?" she whispered without meaning to. Only crickets replied. At the tree line, the flashlight caught a flash of silver. Her grandfather's cavalry sabre, blade sticky, hilt wedged in the crook of a branch 10 feet up, as if hurled by a giant. Below it sat a burlap scarecrow's body propped against the trunk, clothes stuffed with straw. The head, though, was not burlap. It was Marcus's. Cass backed away, breath locked in her lungs. The eyes were open, glazed marbles reflecting the flashlight. Straw protruded from the severed neck where it joined the scarecrow torso. Someone, or something, had replaced Pappy Stuffing's stitched-on pumpkin with a human head. A branch cracked to her right. Cass wheeled. Amber eyes shone between trunks, tall and unblinking. Then came the thud of hooves. She ran. Vines whipped her shins. Pumpkins burst underfoot. The ground seemed to tilt, throwing her toward the ditch. She leapt, hit the far bank on her knees, and scrambled onto the manicured lawn of Twilight Trails. Lights still burned near the maintenance barns. She sprinted toward them, throat raw, until she collided with a deputy patrolling the perimeter. Words spilled. Head, scarecrow, sabre, eyes in the dark. Deputies radioed. Sheriff Hunt led a search party with floodlights and shotguns. They found the sabre. They found the head. They did not find amber eyes or hoofprints. The ground was churned only where Cass had run. By dawn, Hunt again cornered Cass. Either someone's playing one hell of a sick trick, or there's more to Marcus's research than ghost stories. Cass kneaded her temples. He thought the courier's grave was under the old oak. "We ground-penetrated radar that clearing 2 years ago before putting the trail in," Hunt said. "Got anomalies, but assumed tree roots. Maybe we missed something." "Or maybe moving all that earth woke it," Cass murmured. "Woke what?" She hesitated. "Anger. If you die wrong, anger's all you have left." The sheriff stared a long moment. "Superstition won't solve my case, Miss Knox. But if you think of anything else..." Cass did think of something else. At home, she dug out Marcus's folder, which he'd left on her porch 3 days earlier for safekeeping. Photocopied letters, diary entries, parish death rolls. One letter, dated 1781, spoke of Captain Elias Gore, a courier decapitated by loyalist skinners, his body interred where the corn meets the wood beneath the sentinel oak. Another page described a curse. Any who mocked the captain's sacrifice, riding headless in jest, would forfeit his own. Cass's hands shook. She remembered Marcus laughing. She remembered Wyatt selling souvenir keychains shaped like tiny guillotined heads. Twilight Trails reopened 2 nights later despite protest. Corporate sponsors, Wyatt explained, couldn't afford a full season shutdown. The Horseman segment was cut, replaced by a moment of silence cleared of props. Marcus's family wanted earnings donated to a scholarship fund. Sheriff Hunt ordered extra deputies. Cass, unsettled, planned to stay away. Then Wyatt called. "We need your help," he pleaded. "Guests keep seeing things. A rider in the corn, someone shouting for his head. Folks are panicking. You know the land, Cass. You can guide Hunt's people better than any of us." She said no, went to bed, slept an hour, woke to wind lashing her shutters and the distant thunder of hooves. When her clock read 1:13 a.m., same time Marcus's watch had stopped according to the coroner, Cass rose, dressed, and drove her pickup to Twilight Trails. Sheriff Hunt met her at the gate with coffee and a revolver. "We had 3 sightings tonight," she said. "No injuries, thank God, but I'm done chasing shadows. If we see it, we drop it." Cass accepted the revolver with numb fingers. They walked the trail on foot, deputies spaced at 100-yard intervals. Fog clung low. Pumpkins lit the path in grimacing rows. Near the oak, every lantern sputtered out at once. Darkness swallowed the clearing. Cass's ears filled with the pounding of hooves. A shape burst from the corn. A rider on a pale horse, both wreathed in flickering blue flames. The rider's uniform was continental blue, tattered. Where a head should be, a stump spouted ghostlight that twisted into screaming faces. The saber glimmered, raised. "Hold fire!" Hunt shouted, though deputies were already shooting. Bullets passed through the apparition, striking trees. The rider circled, speed rising, until wind whipped Cass's hair. She stepped toward it. "Elias Gore!" The figure halted. The horse reared, forelegs pouring smoke. Cass's knees threatened to collapse, but she forced herself closer, revolver lowered. "You were buried without honor," she told the glowing stump. "We mocked what we didn't understand. My friend did. He's paid in blood. Let the rest of us atone." The rider's saber wavered. A voice creaked like rusted hinges. "Find my head," deputies muttered behind Cass. She nodded slowly. "Where?" The horseman pointed the saber past the oak toward Cass's pumpkin fields. The flames roared, then guttered, and the vision vanished. Only ozone remained. Hunt approached, voice tight. "Please tell me you know where it's buried." Marcus did. Cass's mind raced through maps. Grave under the oak, head elsewhere. Skinners might have taken it as trophy. They camped near the irrigation ditch back then. Maybe they dumped it. Hunt signaled her team. Metal detectors, shovels, full grid search. Daybreak found them combing the pumpkin rows. Cass, working ahead of the deputies, paused where she'd first followed the trail of smashed gourds. Instinct tugged her left. She knelt, brushed soil aside, and uncovered a fragment of rotted wood. A box corner. She called for help. They excavated carefully. Within the small coffer, wrapped in linen that crumbled like ash, lay a skull. The lower jaw had been hacked away. Teeth still clenched a corroded brass button bearing the seal of the Continental Army. Deputies whispered prayers. Cass stood silent, gazing at the ruined face that had waited almost 250 years to be found. That evening, under sheriff's escort, they carried the skull to the oak clearing. A chaplain recited a eulogy. Civil War reenactors from the next county volunteered a 3-gun salute, figuring era differences wouldn't matter to a restless ghost. Cass placed Marcus's saber atop the fresh-turned earth. Wyatt switched off every speaker and strobe. Lanterns burned steady, humble. When the ceremony ended, a breeze sifted the leaves. No hoofbeats echoed. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, mundane, reassuring. Deputies packed gear. Spectators drifted toward the exit. Cass lingered beside the mound. She thought she heard a voice, not screaming this time, but soft, grateful. She answered in a whisper, "Rest easy, Captain." The next nights ran without incident. No rider appeared, no pumpkins burst, no eyes glowed from the tree line. Twilight Trails donated half its season's profits to Marcus's scholarship fund, and the rest to restoring forgotten graves in the county. Wyatt retired the Headless Horseman role permanently. Cass returned to her pumpkins, though for weeks she found herself humming revolutionary marching tunes while she worked, an unconscious tribute. She kept Marcus's last carved jack-o'-lantern on her porch through Thanksgiving. Its candle never seemed to go out, even in the wind. Every so often, after the first snows, visitors claimed they saw a solitary figure in continental blue patrolling the fence row, saber at his side, head firmly attached, nodding courteously to any who met his gaze. Cass never denied the rumor. Some seasons, memory needs its own guardians. And if, come October, a hay wagon creaked past the sentinel oak and someone swore they heard hooves pacing alongside, Cass would smile faintly and murmur to the night, "Just making sure we keep it honest, aren't you, Captain?" The fields stayed peaceful. Pumpkins grew fat. And beneath them, history finally slept.